the job easy for taking it up today. So I look forward to hearing what they've been able to produce, and we're almost there. I think we're just about ready to go, actually.
All right, welcome to the Radioactive Live Room and the latest in the series of 0 Hour Live to Airs. We're welcoming Steve, Al and Neil, who are Shearwater Drift. Yeah. Is that correct? Yeah. So Rattle Records, which suggests that we're going to be listening to some interesting music that sits outside the norms. What is the ethos behind Shearwater Drift?
Well, it's a kind of project. There's no real ethos behind it. We wanted to do something that was really experimental, quite artistic, quite ambient, hopefully very listenable, but challenging as well.
We wanted something that was really pretty heavily influenced by the local Wellington geography as well. I think Neil, being a recent immigrant to this country, he and I met each other and had known each other for a couple of years, and he moved over here, and we had a bit of a chat about maybe doing something together, and we got to talking about landforms and urban landmarks and sort of the sound signatures in some of these places.
So photography and geography through electronic instruments, waveforms, and taonga puara.
Yeah, and there is a sort of a theme running through a perfume. Neil originally had a thought that we could write about Japanese.
Talking about. There's a Japanese game from the floating world, and it was called the Perfume Game. And what would happen is somebody would take a piece of wood and burn it from a secret box. And these people would then have to describe what the smell of that scent would evoke, a childhood memory or a story and stuff like that. And I wanted to try and get something in music that kind of felt like that, like a drifting, takes you to places that's definable but also quite eerie and haunting, and that kind of place when you're kind of falling asleep rather than asleep.
So Yukio and liminal states. I think we should actually hear something.
All right.
Wow. Okay. So where is the starting point? How do you compose the landscapes? Is it a specific landscape, or are you working from or towards a landscape?
So what was the process?
What was the
As the-
process
yeah.
in finding the landscape?
Yeah, it started kind of like Steve and I. Steve has got lots of fantastic recordings of Wellington tunnels and stuff like that, and Steve and I talked about the kind of capturing sounds that were really, really evocative of a place, but perhaps were less well noticed. So, like, we went to Arrow Valley and we recorded metal furniture there, and we created, like, the sound is really hybrid, which is one of the things I really love about it. It's like got really strong synthetic elements, but it's also got a lot of natural elements, and we weave them very carefully together, which is kind of the way the whole piece was created. Like, all three of these wove each of our elements together to create the overall sound.
Yeah.
I guess when we sort of first started talking about this project, it turns out that both Neil and I had been heavily influenced by an author called David Toop, who wrote a book called Oceans of Sound. And his approach to audio and sound was, we'd both been sort of impressed and taken back by that, and so that was, I guess, was a starting point for us in terms of where we wanted to go.
A sense of ways of listening as well as means to get that listening would be the root of it, wouldn't they?
Yeah, that's correct. Yeah.
Can we talk about the jellyfish element?
The jellyfish.
The jellyfish.
The jellyfish.
Well, there's I'm kind of interested in the flow of things, the way that things move from place to place. And jellyfish is like just, I did an exhibition about jellyfish, but that's what it's about. It's just a symbol of how things drift through. The title, there's a really aquatic feel to the whole album, which is totally natural if you think of Wellington surrounded by ocean, in the middle of the ocean and stuff like that. And like for me personally, a lot of it was, how did I arrive here and how did I end up kind of like in Wellington with these fantastic people? And it's the kind of notion of drift. And I wanted the music to kind of capture some of that drifting. You know, if you watch waves or you watch water move, it has beautiful flow. I mean, people will sit and watch ripples and pools and stuff for hours for exactly that reason, the aesthetic flow of it. And some of it, not all of the music, but some of the music in this, I wanted to have that kind of feel.
So you're working with a very specific time and space. How do you recreate that time and space? Because it's something that is so ephemeral.
Yeah, well, it's actually quite difficult to do, and I think what we kind of realised is if we're going to play this live, you can't reproduce it. What you aim to do is capture the feeling and the emotion behind the music, and that's what you're trying to create live. So you're trying to create a replica of the feel of the piece in all sorts of ways, rather than an exact duplication of the piece.
I'd imagine you spent a lot of time sort of in various rooms just working through the sound and working out how you could weave your sounds together.
Yeah, we spent many hours mixing and getting the sort of the blend of sounds that we wanted, for sure. Yeah, a lot of back and forth and saying this works and this doesn't. And yeah, I mean, initially it was conceived as very much a kind of a studio type thing. It's only just recently that we've decided, well, hey, maybe Neil had an exhibition opening, an art gallery opening recently, and we thought, well, hey, let's play some stuff. And we sort of found a way to do it.
Yeah. So was that quite a difficult process? You know, coming from this, obviously, this point where you had time and you could get something that you really wanted, to suddenly have this demand placed on you to become a performance.
Well, to be quite honest, we're in very safe hands because Alistair here is a well-seasoned performer. So Steve and I knew that if we could just get our bits together, we're like the backing singers. Alistair is, fantastic at performing live. So I was quite happy about doing it when Alistair agreed to do it with us.
That's nice of you to say, Neil. But yes, it has come together quite easily. Like with our first performance at Thistle Hall, we played for about 40 minutes, and we thought we'd only play for 15. So that's a really good indication, I think, that we were in the zone from the start. Yeah.
But having said that, if you feel like we've gone over time, Miles, just
No,
push us out the door.
I think we should compress time again. Right, you've been listening to Shearwater Drift, which, how long's the project been happening for?
We released the album in March, and it took us probably the best part of a year to put it together. We've all got other kind of projects and day jobs and things in there, so it took quite a long while. And I think, as Steve was talking about earlier, it was very heavily and carefully put together. We produced it quite extensively to make sure that the subtlety and the delicacy and the nuances are all in there in the final album, I hope.
Well, when Neil and I first met, we'd been discussing this project for a while, and we didn't really have anything that kind of tied it together in a sense that we had a lot of ideas, good ideas, of course, but it just so happened that Neil happened to play some stuff to one of his workmates at the library, and it happened to be Al, and they'd got talking over a cup of tea at work or something, and discovered they were both into music, and they did a bit of a music swap and listened to what each other had played, and Al was, I think he quite liked what Neil had been doing, and actually what Al has brought to the table, his mastery over Tonga Poro, has really elevated what we're doing to another level, I think.
Yeah, well, it's three very distinct voices, isn't it?
Yeah.
And it's but finding that combination, finding that way of making them cohere is just this. It's an incredible process that can't have been easy.
A lot of it comes down to the initial ideas. We talked a lot about exactly what we wanted this album to be and do, and a lot about the feeling behind it and the emotion. I mean, like, we're talking about Ocean of Sound, and to me a lot of it is how does sound affect you emotionally, and we all agreed in that. Although we come from very different kind of points, we all wanted to put that emotion and soul in the kind of the broader sense of the word soul music into the project.
Yeah, and you probably heard one of the tracks that we just played had a lot of ambient noise recorded from the Mount Victoria Tunnel, a sound mark which is instantly recognisable to most Wellingtonians, going to and from the airport. And I think what we wanted with that one was to maybe acknowledge the reason for for why people do that, and a lot of people don't necessarily know much about the story about why people honk their horns as they go through the tunnel. And so it's something I'd come across a few times in a couple of the Te Ara, the history website, and one of the local papers, the story behind why people honk their horns going through, and it's kind of a response to to ward off ghosts or to ward off a spirit, and it's actually a young woman, Phyllis Simons, was murdered during the construction of the Mount Victoria tunnel, and so the story goes, and so that is why people honk their horns as they go through, and it's become a kind of a Wellington folk thing, and a lot of people don't necessarily know why they do that, or it's just becomes habitual, but we kind of wanted to recognise that Wellington sound mark, but maybe dedicate a sort of a thing to her.
A response to an audio response,
Yeah.
as such. Yeah, are you finding that now you've reached this point with the Shearwater drift, there are further things you want to say, there are further expressions?
Sorry. We can, when we play together, we're sort of given that opportunity to revisit and re-explore what we recorded. Yeah. So, I mean, yeah, we'll look out for our upcoming Pyramid Club gig, which we haven't booked yet, but we will. Come along to that. And we'll probably be playing slightly different than how we are today. Yeah.
All right. Well, can we coax one more track?
Sure thing.
Thank you very much, the 0 Hour, for organising this. And, yes, thank you, Shearwater Drift.
What shall we go with, guys? Cherry Blossom?
Verisaro?
Okay, Ferrisaro.
Now we're doing something a little different today. We're hunting rhythms. We're hunting